just fall apart. Our fingers interlaced, we fall beneath the waves. My body is enslaved in the prison of your
everyone. My name's Lynn and I want to welcome you all to the third and last live panel event by the Women's Banner Group to celebrate International Women's Day. On Saturday, we heard from women in politics. Yesterday, we heard from women in trade unions. And today I have the honour of chairing our Women in the Community panel. I'm really excited to have such an amazing panel of women who've been doing incredible work in their local communities, some of whom have been active for a very long time, some of whom who are reasonably new to community activism. In a slight change to the advertised panel, sadly, Chris Fletcher isn't able to join us today. She's feeling a little unwell after receiving her COVID vaccination. However, in her place, we have the amazing Laura Daly, founder of the Women's Banner Group. Now, when Laura told me this morning that Chris wasn't able to take part and that she would look for someone else to fill the spot, my immediate response was, we don't need anyone else, you do it. To which she replied, I haven't really done any community work, have I? Well, I think you could probably imagine what my response was. I'm not going to tell you what she said or what I said, because I want Laura to tell you herself just what she has done. Anyway, I'm going to be asking our panelists what they do in the local community, why they think it's important for women to be involved in voluntary work in their local communities, and what it is that they've been specifically involved with that's affected women and girls. So if we have enough time at the end, I'm also going to go back around and ask each one of them which woman has inspired them. Anyway, I'm going to get straight into it because we only have an hour and people aren't watching this event to listen to me. So I will go around everyone in the order they are on my screen. So first up, Fiona, welcome and thank you for coming. Can you tell our listeners who you are, what your role is in the community, and if your voluntary work has been impacted during the pandemic?
Okay, first, happy International Women's Day to everybody, every woman watching. At this present moment, I'm a town councillor, but also a coordinator of the food bank in our local community. Certainly throughout the pandemic, our referrals have absolutely gone through the roof. People have been furloughed, or some people have been made redundant, big wait for universal credit. And I would say in the last 4 weeks, what's become more and more apparent is that people are running out of gas and electric. Obviously, if you've got children in the house, you know, people are at work more. So I rang up one provider for a young woman who had a baby and was told by the person at the end of the phone. The government's told us we don't have to give people credit when they've run out. That's so, anyway, long protracted, managed to get to the bottom of that. But things are really, really serious and they're getting worse. I would say my political activism, and this is going to give me, it stretches 54 years. My first experience was campaigning for, I went to a girls' grammar school, which you had to stay, your parents had to sign that you stayed until you were 16 when the leaving age was 15. But people who wanted to go to college obviously got no finance, and that impacted on, you know, basically what we're talking about now, people in poverty. Why do I think it's important that women get involved in their communities? Because the reality is, even through this pandemic, it has been recognised by the Equalities and Gender Commission that women have been impacted more throughout the pandemic. They have lost more money, and we now have women who become pregnant and the law doesn't seem to protect. My whole background has been in women's work and support, starting with the setting up Rape Crisis, Reclaim the Night, you know, everything that's gone on through that. But I'm really passionate about actually promoting women because of the way that we are underrepresented in our society of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Wow, 54 years of community work. That is dedication.
Giving me a game away there. Really only 29 and a half.
Yeah, and you know, the vital work that you and everybody else up and down the country is doing with the food banks, especially at the moment. You know, hats off to all of you. It's incredible.
But can I say it's an evil necessity, because people should not. I can truly say I started off as a social worker many donkeys years ago. And the thought that people would be denied food, not saying it hasn't always been poverty, but the differential now between the rich and the poor is staggering.
It's astronomical, isn't it?
We do it, but I long for the day that people have sufficient food, that you don't actually have to rely, because, you know, which charity shouldn't be providing food for people? It's absolutely diabolical.
I think the fact that we need charities speaks volumes in itself, and the fact that food bank usage has risen 4,000% in the last 10 years is just criminal. Anyway, Neve, welcome and thank you for coming. Can you tell our listeners who you are and what your role is in the community, and if your voluntary work has been impacted during the pandemic?
Hiya, Lynn. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be here and to talk to you about my role as a member of ACORN, the Tenants and Community Union. I'm one of those panellists that hasn't been involved in community activism for very long. Haven't been alive for very long, really, either. So there's lots to learn yet. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody else this evening. But ACORN, as I said, is a Tenants and Community Union and membership organisation of tenants, workers, residents, cleaners, nurses, retail staff, you know, working class people who keep the country running and deserve their fair share of resources. We've got groups all over the country organising for decent, dignified and affordable housing by resisting oppression by the state and by, you know, this propertied class of landlords that are hoarding wealth, be it the kinds of resources like food that we were discussing earlier on, or housing, by using collective power, that which we already hold, to win back our rights and resources. I'm a member of the Newcastle branch, but I live in Durham, and I'm currently in the process of organising with other members to set up a local group so that we can start doing that here in our county. The pandemic has really hammered home the fact that housing is a public health issue. The government asks people to stay at home, to distance and isolate, to keep themselves and others safe. And decades of housing and a homelessness crisis in the UK meant that people were placed at the mercy of the virus and of the government's neglect. And, you know, this is demonstrated really clearly in the fact that Shelter, another charity, since lockdown began, has declared that 1 in 4 calls that they've received from private renters to their house and their helpline has been or were expressing anxieties about being made homeless as a result of not being able to pay rent. Guardian was reporting that 7,000 households have been made homeless since the UK, since the pandemic kicked off, and that's a figure from around the start of the year. And that's because the government neglected to provide renters with the protections that they deserve to keep them safe, including a rent suspension with no expectation for that rent to be repaid. And this is after some years of promising things to renters like an end to Section 21 evictions, which were evictions by which landlords can essentially kick their tenants out at their whim for whatever reason they choose that they've offended them, which is obviously puts tenants in an extremely precarious situation. And landlords will have the asset of a house for as long as they choose to keep it. But for renters, the precarity of their situation, which is made even more so during a pandemic, really puts them and their lives in jeopardy. And that's why ACON members fought tooth and nail with other tenants unions for the ban on evictions to be put in place, and that is ongoing for the time being, but we have to keep fighting to get the government to extend it. And that was a real victory, but it didn't even come close to what we needed of the government to keep renters and our communities safe during this crisis. But there's a great deal more that we can do aside from kind of asking politicians to care. And that's what we do in our community union. We organise resistance against evictions. And we've got an army of members who are coming out to do just that in what we call community protection. It's very simple. When we know that an eviction is going to be taking place, and certainly we are living in an eviction and arrears crisis, we organise to be present at that eviction. We turn up in our ACON gear. That sounds like riot gear. It's not riot gear. It's just your standard red clothing and a placard, just all very processy. And we, as safely as possible, we take this very seriously, especially on account of the pandemic, resist that eviction by presenting a barrier that is both literal and also symbolic of the collective strength of the members of our union. And we do this likewise in other circumstances where other tenants' rights are being undermined and their resources stolen from them, where your landlord isn't providing the repairs that you need to have, dignified and livable accommodation. But ultimately, what this shows is that collective action does work to address this huge power imbalance within society, where you've got a group of people who can change the quality of your life or have just such a large impact over the quality of your life, despite having very little to do with it. So it's all about taking back control of our communities for working class people. And it's just simple, and that's why it works.
That sounds absolutely amazing, Neve. I know you spoke to me a few weeks ago on Facebook Messenger about the group, and I'm so sorry I haven't been able to get along to any of your meetings yet, but I think everyone in this group is the same. We're all involved in so many things. It's really hard, isn't it, to keep active in everything that you want to be involved in. I think in the 6th richest nation in the world, it's disgusting that people in this community and our community, and particularly in the northeast, in the deprived areas, we don't have, as you said, dignified and reasonably priced accommodation. It's abhorrent. I can't fathom it in this country, in this day and age, that is happening. And 7,000 households evicted during this pandemic. Shame on this government. That's all I can say.
Absolutely.
Anyway, quickly moving on. Emma, welcome and thank you for coming. Can you tell our listeners who you are, what your role is in the community, and if your voluntary work has been impacted during the pandemic?
Thanks, Lynn, and thanks for inviting me on the panel. I really appreciate that. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to be part of the sisterhood of women working in the community. Well, I don't have an official role. I don't work as a community worker as such. I'm actually a bookshop owner. But in 2017, I was elected as the Women's Officer of Bishop Auckland CLP. And as part of our community plan to appeal to the grassroots, we decided that one of our actions would be to be visible to the community. So one of the things that I undertook was to sort of reach out to the community as the women's officer. And in doing so, even in the tiny little town that I live in, the Georgian market town, where everybody's looks quite well off in Barnard Castle, what we actually uncovered was huge amounts of deprivation and poverty. So Barnard Castle looks like this lovely little picturesque town, but actually the people there are really struggling to exist, and that's back in 2017. So you can imagine how much worse that's got in the sort of 4 years since. So in 2010, Barnard Castle didn't have a food bank, like lots of other places, like everywhere else in the country, I suppose. And now we've got 3, and I think we've got 6 across the constituency. So one of the things that I undertook with the Women's Forum was to collect in a central point and to try and get food out to our food banks across the constituency, and that's what we've continued to do, and we've done it quite well. We have big pushes. So for school hunger, we've collected, particularly for Christmas. We do a really unfashionable thing, so we tell people not to give us fancy goods for Christmas, but just to give us good wholesome food, and we do our best to get that food to the food banks for Christmas. For our refuge, we do a really nice thing. At Christmas, we supply them with a good stock of comfort packs, and in the comfort packs, we try and put pajamas and socks and knickers, and some nice things like makeup and razors and chocolates, so that if a woman comes into the refuge at Bishop Auckland, she's got everything in there to feel good about herself. She can put some makeup on, shave her legs, wear some underarm deodorant and sit in a bedroom and eat some chocolates and feel human. So we try and stock the refuge with that. Over the first lockdown, when PPE was, when there was a shortage of PPE, and Matt Hancock can say what he likes, there was a shortage of PPE. One of the things that, because our constituency then, we as a whole constituency, as a whole collective, we did a push on collecting food and getting it out to the food bank. So one of the things that, while the whole constituency was doing that, what I tried to do was try and find people that were specialists in making things, and we started to make cloth face masks that were washable. And I found some stitches in my area, and we were able to make, I think we made about 1,900 cloth face masks and about 1,600 full face visors, which we were able to give out to bus companies, taxi companies, independent shops, the co-op across our little area, schools, all the care homes, all the care providers, and some doctors' surgeries. So when it was in absolute short supply, to the point where there wasn't any, we were able to provide that. We also had enough cloth masks to be able to give out to the public free. So we put an advert in the paper, and my bookshop was a single point of contact. So anybody that couldn't afford to buy face masks, the cloth ones, when it became mandatory to wear them, they could pick them up from the bookshop free at the point where it was really expensive to buy them. So we were able to do that. And what we did was we asked for donations of cloth to come into the bookshop. I got them out to the stitchers, they made them, and then they brought them back to me. And we were able to supply face masks in that way, which was really crucial at the point when a single face mask cost upwards of $6.99. And that was, you know, if your income's really low, then that was a massive outgoing at that point, and it was becoming mandatory to wear them. So that was a really good project. And the stitchers who did that were were doing it all in their own time. I was just providing them with the cloth to be able to do it. Other things that we've done, we get really odd calls in at the bookshop. So just recently, I got a call on my mobile from Northwest Durham. So this is the way the network has gone as the Labour Party Women's Officer now, and it amuses me, and I feel really it's a sort of warm feeling that we've got this network of in the Labour Party. So I got a call from an officer at Northwest Durham who said that somebody at Stainton Grove, which is an estate about 6 miles from me, needed a food parcel. And this lady,
it was me that rang you.
Was it you that rang me, Fiona? I think this is wonderful. So I'd never met Fiona. I know your name, Fiona, and Fiona rang me, and I was able to go to one of our food banks, pick up this. Within the afternoon, this lady had got a food parcel. But not only that, when I got there, this lady had 2 little dogs that hadn't met Fiona, and she wasn't so much bothered about herself, who was a diabetic. And as an ex-midwife, I was frantic when I heard that she was diabetic and she hadn't eaten. So I was like kind of rushing about and making sure that she had the right food. But when I got to her house, this poor woman was absolutely desperate that her poor little pooches hadn't eaten. So I got there, gave her her food. I was, desperate about her. And then had to rush out and make sure that her dogs had 2 weeks of food as well, because she was so upset. And this network that women have, that Fiona got hold of me and I got hold of the women in the food bank, because it's women that staff the food bank.
Absolutely. I
got out to this woman. We care enough to be bothered to go back and sort our dogs out. And then we all go home and it's sorted. And I'm sure men care. I'm absolutely sure they care, because I live with men and I've got 3 sons and I know that they do. But this kind of sisterhood that we have between us, this energy that we have, that we don't rest till it's done. And I know that's what we do, because I've got women friends and I'm sitting here with you. And I know that this is how it works. And I know that we're going to talk about the women that inspired us, but I know that the people that made me who I am are the 2 Bettys from Hordon and Blackhall. And that's, one of them was my grandmother. And in 1984, in the middle of the miners' strike, I'm doing exactly the same thing that Betty and Betty did when the miners' strike was on. And they had a book, and they went round and collected from everybody's house. But in the book at the back was what the Smiths needed and what the Joneses needed and what the Reynolds needed. And it was a coat or a pram or a pair of shoes. And we're doing exactly the same thing that they did. So. And it was the women doing what the families needed. So we're kind of following in along, and I'm sure this has gone on forever. So it's, we're talking about women working in community. We're women doing what women have always done, aren't we? I'm sure women are always going to do it. We're following this pattern of making sure that everybody's right. And I suppose it's a working class women's way of having out and sharing it. That's what we do, I suppose.
That's wonderful, Emma. Obviously, I've known you for quite some time now, and I know just how hard you work with the Women's Forum. You're talking about the huge amounts of deprivation and poverty, which has got a lot worse over the last 10 years. And the fact that, back in 2010, did you say we had no food banks back in 2010 in our constituency, and now we have 6?
We had 7. I think we have 6. We have 6 main ones, but obviously all the churches have little ones as well. So the churches have little food collections. So I don't know whether they're an actual food bank or they're supplying food banks. It's hard to keep up with how many we've got, because there's lots of little places now supplying. But it's just like Fiona was saying, it's just the level of poverty now. You can kind of equate that to the 80s, what I saw in the 80s in the miners' strike, when people really had now, and why you question why we've got to this point, don't you? Why we've been allowed to get here? Why people aren't able to do the 2 things then that are necessary. It's like you can supply people with food now, but they might not have enough to heat that food on a cooker.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, Lynn, in the sixth richest country in the world, nobody should be evicted from a home in the middle of a pandemic or
Absolutely not.
be able to cook it on their cooker.
Yeah, and I think the big difference as well, you know, during the miners' strike, and being the child of a striking miner at the time, the families had no food because the man wasn't bringing a wage in.
Yeah.
But people who are using food banks in this day and age work,
yeah,
and they still can't afford to live. It's criminal. Anyway,
I think that's a misnomer that people think that people using food banks are not in work, but
yeah,
we have people
lot
who
of
are
them are.
actually working and actually still using food banks.
It is shocking.
It is, but thank you for that, Emma. Okay, next, Samantha, you are next on my little list. So welcome and thank you for coming. And can you tell our listeners who you are, as if they don't know you already, what your role is in the community, and if your voluntary work has been impacted during this pandemic?
Yeah, so my name's Samantha Townsend, and you probably know me as a town councillor and a general loudmouth. And what I do is I use that loudmouth in my community to try and help people. So I am the person who will gather up a group of residents and help them write a petition that is actually directed at the right person. I've had 2 really successful petitions that have gone sort of through me. The most recent one about bringing locomotion number 1 back to Shildon. We knew locomotion number 1 was coming to Shildon, but we needed to support our museum staff who were getting horrendous abuse actually for the very non-controversial thing they were doing, which was moving a piece of their own stock around. And the other petition that I coalesce some members of the public around is about saving our secondary school. At the moment we have a secondary school in Shildon which is technically not closed, but there are no students being educated at it because it's unsafe. The drains are basically collapsed, it's overrun with rats, it's fallen apart, and we are concerned that site's going to get shut and there will be no secondary school provision in our town. That's been quite successful. That's now been adopted as an official town council policy, that we want secondary school provision in our town, and we've just got to keep pushing that issue. I am also involved in an organisation called Shildon Heritage Alliance, and our campaign is Save Our Stute. We've got a beautiful historical building, Shildon Railway Institute, which basically houses a workmen's club at the moment. I am more interested in the building than the workmen's club, but at the moment the workmen's club's keeping the doors open, so I'm involved with them. I'm not on the directors of the CIC, but because I've got experience of running a CIC, I basically help and advise them on the legalities around that and to try and help them generate ideas. So yeah, just all of these little things like supporting my local football club. I think, you know, that's so important, because that's real solidarity in action. And going to places where people are, like the workmen's club, like the football club, people talk to you properly and tell you actually what they're thinking rather than what they think you want them to say. And so I think it's really important to actually physically go into our communities. Emma's got that with her bookshop. She's physically part of the community. So I imagine people say all kinds of things in Emma's bookshop and don't realise they're being overheard. So that's me. And sort of my thing is, you know, nobody needs to give you permission to do these things. Yeah, I did get elected to be a town councillor before I started really being the person that shouted up. But there's no reason why I had to be. Everybody who has a voice is able to go, actually, I'm making a stand on this issue and I'm going to write the petition, or I'm going to hire a hall and have a public meeting and let people talk about this. And I'm going to drag the local politicians in so they have to listen to us. Or if they don't come, I'm going to tell everybody they haven't come, you know? So I just think that's a really key message I'd love for people to take away. I know Deb is listening. Deb's a great person for not having to be asked to have an opinion on things. I was getting some real stick for something that wasn't my fault, because when it was really icy recently, and Deb was really outraged on my behalf, and she set up a crowdfunder for grit. And she said, right, all of you people who are so bothered there's not enough grit in your grit bin, here's a crowdfunder, put some money in and I'll personally deliver it to your house. And that's she's hearing us. That's the type of thing, we need people to take an active interest in their communities, and yeah, nobody has to give you permission to do that.
That's brilliant, Samantha. I mean, obviously, again, I know you really well, and I know just how active you are in your local community. Shildon is so lucky to have you. I don't know where you get your time. You do so much. You're involved in everything: locomotion, the Heritage Institute, advising and supporting, and helping people with petitions. And yeah, you're just so active. It's amazing, and I love how you are able to sort of, when you're helping people, the politics doesn't come into it. You're a member of the Labour Party, but politics never comes into it at all. And I think there's a lot of people should take a leaf out of your book.
Absolutely. What you have to realise is people see you and people see what you do. And, when it comes round to an election, if you are a person that stands for election, they will remember that. If you shove it down their throat every time you're talking to them, they're like, well, she's got an ulterior motive. She's not really doing it because she cares about the community. And you take the whole wind out of it, Obviously, I couldn't possibly do what I do if I didn't genuinely care about the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm definitely not going to lead people to believe that I'm just doing it for some nefarious reason.
Oh, thank you, Samantha. And last but certainly not least, Laura, welcome and thank you for coming along to your event. You need no introduction, but tell our listeners who you are and what your role is in the community, and if what you do has been impacted by the pandemic.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Laura Daly. Originally founded the Women's Banner Group. It's so strange. First of all, I need to start by saying I'm so sad that Chris Fletcher wasn't able to make it tonight. Chris is like the other women on this panel. She's absolutely fantastic, and the work she does in the city of Durham is unbelievable. Like all the women on this panel, she just spends all of her time dedicated to other people and helping other people, and it really is just a sight to behold. So we hope Chris feels better soon, and sadly he's stuck with me. Honestly, like Lynn said at the beginning, I was sort of like, well, I'm not really sure that I am a community activist, and Lynn gave me some choice words. And I think essentially what I wanted to do at the beginning when I started the Banner Group was just have a bit more representation for women in areas where they should have always been and were always anyway. I didn't think it would catch on as well as it has. I mean, I should really have known, given that we have you, Lynn, Heather Wood, Mary Turner, Samantha, I mean, Fleur, Lottie, Iju. I could be here for literally an hour just saying the names of the women who've given us solidarity, who've helped with every project, who've done something for us. It's been incredible. So yeah, it started off with, as I'm sure everybody watching this probably already knows, we created a community banner to march in the Durham Miners Gala. Lynn was essential in getting us to be the first all-women's banner group to be affiliated to the Durham Miners Association, which is a huge deal, especially if you're from a mining community and a woman. And you know that we weren't even allowed in those rooms at one point. Heather Wood has some fantastic stories she'll tell you about that. In fact, Social Think Tank have an interview with Heather where she talks about just that. So by all means, go and watch it. It's incredible. And then I suppose once we'd sort of achieved that, we saw how incredible it was when you got women together working towards a common goal, and all these just absolutely fantastic people I'd met that I didn't know existed. I didn't know this sort of community activism was even a possibility. I mean, it was beyond my wildest expectations. We knew that, well, this is not where it's going to end. We clearly need to do more. And so, yeah, it has been sort of about representation of women, but we've also gotten involved with, recently we've been doing, getting involved in the campaign to make misogyny a hate crime. So we do get involved in sort of political activism as well now. We've just submitted our response to that on Christmas Eve, and we're waiting to see when that comes back to the Lords and the House of Commons, how that goes. So we're really interested in that. But we're also interested in just helping people just get on and just helping people have a better life and have a better say. What's really important to us is telling our young people that, you know, misogyny doesn't need to exist, that sexism is a archaic concept, and girls are not better than boys are not better than girls. And, you know, I had this conversation with my daughter last night. She went back to school today. She's nearly 7. And she said one of the boys at school thinks all the boys are better than girls and she's not allowed to play with them. Well, I was like, right. But she was so sensible about it. And she says, I don't want to tell me teacher because I don't want my teacher to get involved. I want to sort this. So she decided she was going to get all of her friends together and any of the boys who thought the same and just say, look, no, you're absolutely wrong. And there's more of us than you and you're in the wrong. And if you don't want to play with us, that's fine because there's lots of us. And I was like, that'll do. Well done. So, you know, we are promoting that amongst as many young people as we can. If we can get out into communities, I suppose that's the biggest impact COVID has had on us. Our whole thing is getting out into communities, showing our film that we've gotten, showing people our banner. You know, our new silk banner hasn't even been marched yet, which is really sad. And it's not going to be at the Durham Miners Gala this year because that's been cancelled. So yeah, I guess everything we do is sort of community based. I think I'm like a lot of women in that I really suffer badly with imposter syndrome. So when you were like, you can come on today, I was like, yeah, I can't because I haven't done anything. And then I think about all the things you've done. Oh, actually, you know, we've done all right here. And I'm as much a victim of all the things I'm trying to argue against as anybody, you know. I won't go into the long list of things I suffer from that I'm going to try and tackle in the next year. But yeah, it's been epic, and it has allowed me to meet a lot of incredible women and just try and promote what they're doing. And also, let's not forget the fact that women are written out of history all the time. That's another one of our jobs, to get those people remembered and recognised, hence our Blue Plaque project. And eventually we will get this book written, Lynn.
Oh my
Eventually.
Goodness, I know.
Yeah,
Keeps
so
getting to the
I
back
guess,
burner, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. I guess that's sort of what we do.
Thank you, Laura. I mean, you're right in what you said. You know, you are responsible for bringing together so many incredible women. Without you, I would never have met Heather Wood, the lady who got me a Christmas present during the miners' strike. You know, she fed families like mine for a whole year, and she set up all the women's support groups. Amazing. You know, all the other women that you mentioned as well. You know, you've brought them all together, Laura, and the campaigns that you've got us all involved in, again, all so incredibly important. Period poverty, misogyny, you know, blue plaques, everything that we've been doing as a group to recognise the achievements of women and get recognition for the historically important women in our local communities that, because they work in class, have just been forgotten. It's really shameful. So thank you for giving us all the platform to be able to do things like this. It's amazing. And I'm going to very quickly, I'm just looking, because I've got Fiona's clock, I can see what time it is. I don't have a clock here in the kitchen, but I'm going to have to move very quickly on to the second question, and going back around in the same order that we did before. Fiona, I want to start with you. Why do you think it's important that women are involved in supporting their local community? And what was it specifically that got you active?
Well, as I said, I've been active a very, very long time. Obviously, I'm a socialist, but I also class myself as a feminist. The fact that women are unrepresented, but women are doers. You know, like Samantha said, you don't need permission. You don't need to say, here I am, a member of the Labour Party. But to me, part of socialism is love for one another and love for your community. And so women can get involved. It's very important that they get involved, because as I've already said, we're underrepresented in every aspect of life. You know, I would like to sort of say one thing today, that my beautiful sister who died in 2019 would have eventually today, because she was very fortunate to have a birthday on the 8th of March, today she would have been eligible for her state pension. Now, how many of those women have been robbed? So we get involved in things that matter, not just to women, but we get involved in things that matter to our children, to our community, and it's an aspect of love for one another. Yes, and that's not dismissing that men don't get involved, but primarily we need to be involved because we see what's happening to children and other people's children. You know, when you have children come to the door and saying, I've got no food, and they come to where they know they're going to be safe, to ask those things. So get involved, even if it's the tiniest little bit. And that's why I wanted a big shout out to the WASPy women who formed that fantastic campaign. As I say, and how many of those women have died without ever receiving what was their due. So whatever little you can contribute, women get out there and actually get involved.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you, Fiona. And you're right, it is important for women to get involved because we are disproportionately affected, being the group that are massively underrepresented. Very important issue. I'm going to very quickly go to Neve because we are only 15 minutes away from the end. So Neve, why do you think it's important that women are involved in supporting their local community, and what was it specifically that got you active?
I think it's really important because inequality is not somebody else's problem, you know, and we have to stop deferring power to men, and thus to politicians and charities. Just stop deferring power to like the patriarchal establishment, I think. And what's so amazing about groups like the Women's Banner Group, and why it's so important for women to get involved in community organising, is that feminists have had the task of, you know, carving out spaces through struggle in which women's solidarity efforts can be visible. And those efforts, because of it, and because of their ability to tell their own stories and develop, you know, new forms of community action, mean that oftentimes within these groups, oftentimes these groups are much less like hierarchical and alienating than those based on the organising strategies so favoured by like men community organisers. And so, you know, women engage in diverse new visions of the world that are not bound by patriarchal institutions in which these hierarchical social relations are replaced by egalitarian socialist ones. And there's still a lot of work to be done to achieve economic, social and political liberation, but you know, it's going to be women who are organising collectively, who've had power stolen from them at every stage in their life, who are going to dismantle all of those different types of bondage. And there's no better time to start than now, right? So, you know, get involved with Acorn, join the Women's Banner Group. It's literally no better time than now.
Fantastic. I love that response, Neve. And you're right. We're not bound by, or we shouldn't be bound by patriarchal hierarchy. It's and inequality. Like you said, it's not someone else's problem. It's our problem. So women should be at the forefront to solve that. Emma, very quickly over to you. So why do you think it's important that women should be involved in the local community, and what was it that got you active?
I've always been active. Having 3 sons and studying for a postgraduate degree and various bits of whatever slowed me down a bit. But the thing that really got me active again in 2010 was obviously the coalition government, but also what really kicked me off was a gentleman from the BNP got a job in I was talking about this last night, wasn't I? But a teacher at Teesdale School he eventually went on to become the leader of the BNP, but he was teaching in my son's school. And it was then that I thought, I can't be cozy anymore. And I was cozy. I was kind of, tucked up making bread and bringing up my boys. And I then kind of launched back into activism where I'd been in the 80s. And it was nice kind of getting back into that. But I brought my kids with me. So I took my kids out and campaigned outside the co-op in Barnard Castle. And I think we were, as I was saying last night, we were the first people ever to put a table up outside the co-op in Barnard Castle and hand out leaflets and stickers and stuff. So that brought me back again. So that was my second sort of thing. And I've never stopped really, because how can you stop with this terrible government and with what we're seeing now? And my kids are all activists now, and that makes me terribly proud. And I don't think we can stop it. And as Neve was saying, I've got 3 boys and they're all feminists, but I'm not taking anything away from them being a feminist, because if women are equal to men, their lives are easier, because why should they have to shoulder the burden of horrible toxic masculinity? That no man wants that. So if we're all in this together and we're all equal, then we all share the burdens and the benefits, and that's what we want. That's the world that we want. I don't want my sons to have to grow up with that awful toxic masculinity. I want men and women to share everything together. That's the world that I want to see. And to do that, I've had to be a terribly irritating, loud, shouty woman. And that's what I'm known for. And I'll carry on doing that. And I'll carve my space, Neve. I won't apologise for that. I carve a big space because I've got a great big gob. And I'll carry on doing it without apology. Until the day that we get rid of the Tories and we get a better government, and we see some benefit from our labours, because I'm sure that day will come. I'm sure that we can't carry on doing this. I'm sure that we will eventually get rid of them, and because it is all getting too horrible at the moment, isn't it? I'm sure we will win. I'm standing as a council candidate on the 6th of May. I'll never win in Barnard Castle, but if we can scrape even a couple of votes away from the Tories, who've always won here, apart from in the dim and distant past, then that's what I'll do, and we'll keep coming back here. I mean, it's time that changes people's mind, and we'll just keep doing that. So yeah, that's what we'll do, and we'll keep shouting and we'll keep banging on.
Thank you, Emma. And wow, BNP anti-activism getting you back into the swing of things from being active in the 80s. What, no better cause, and they've gone. Indeed. So you can played a part in that.
Well,
the guy you're talking about, the school teacher, used to actually live a few streets down from me.
Yes, I know. I came and did a rally in Spenny.
Yeah.
They were there in your town. I remember it. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So Samantha, over to you next. Why do you think it's important that women are involved in local communities, and what got you active?
Yeah, and that school teacher, his brother was my DT teacher. And they've both managed to get themselves struck off from teaching,
They
which is
did.
good. Well done. Yes, I mean, basically, I had the realization when I had my kids that people were making decisions about my life. And I know I talked about this on the last one, but it really is. I discovered that people were making decisions about my life. I looked at who those people were, and I realized that they were all retired white men. And I thought, well, no wonder they don't understand how difficult it is to be going through the process of discovering you've got disabled children and trying to find them the help that they need. So, from a community point of view, what did I do? I got myself on the school governors. That's something you can do. Anybody who, most people can do. A lot of schools have vacant spots on the governing bodies regularly because it's quite an involved role. But there are spots for parent governors, and you are just as entitled to be there as anybody else. And you can be the person. I was the person recently saying, okay, I really love what you're doing in terms of remote learning, but actually there is a huge gap in terms of the provision for kids with special educational needs, and offer that challenge. And there's lots of ways like that you can offer challenge without actually being like in charge of something. And hopefully, as we progress, hopefully we will have decisions about provision for special educational needs and commissioning for health services driven by people who are actually affected by those things. And that's definitely what I'd like to see going forward. And my feeling was very much, well, I need people to represent me and my very specific set of circumstances. I can either spend the next 20 years trying to find that person or I can be that person. And, if it's not me, then who's it going to be? If it's not now, then when's it going to be? And that was very much what dragged me into learning to find my big community-minded mouth.
That's brilliant, Samantha. And I can certainly second being a school governor. It was something that I first got involved in when Caleb was in nursery school. So I was pregnant with Isaac at the time, so back in 2010, and I was a governor at his nursery for a couple of years. And then I moved over to be a governor at the school when he moved over to the school. Unlike your school, we had no vacancies. And the first time there was 3 people in the run up in the election, so to speak. I didn't get it first time around, but then the next year, when one of the parent governors dropped off and wasn't coming out, I got onto the board of governors the second year around. Very, very rewarding, very rewarding. If anybody else out there is thinking about doing something similar, I highly recommend it. And then finally, Laura, the lovely Laura, why do you think it's important for women to be? I mean, goodness, I think you've probably just said why it's important, but yeah, what was it that got you active? Why did you start the group?
Well, I mean, I know we're short on time. I'll do this as quickly as I can, but it's kind of a bit of a convoluted story because I like to think of myself as a nice person, but I don't have this long history of activism. For me, what it was, and I've told this story before, and people will have probably heard it before, and it's awful, but it was the day that Alan Kurdi washed up on the beach that did it for me. I just couldn't live in a world where a small child like that could have to experience that, could be killed in that way, that his family were forced to make that decision. It absolutely rocked my entire life, and I still cry about it now all the time. And so that kind of made me go, right, no, this is not okay. I need to do something, anything. And obviously, I'm just one person, so I felt really lost. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to do something. So I got involved in politics, and then I became the women's officer for Sedgefield. So I started getting into sort of women's issues and things like that. And at first, I did feel like a bit of an imposter. I was like, wow, why am I here? I'm just a white woman who's never experienced any issues. And then I realized, oh no, I've experienced a ton of issues that were just all normalized. And when you go back and look at all these situations you've been in, you're like, this is not okay. And then I met other women who've been through similar things, and then women who were involved in, and it just grew from there, really. The Women's Banner Group came out of a sense of a bit of unfairness. I knew at the time, the same year we started the Banner Group, the Women's Gala was coming back. Which was a lovely idea. The Women's Gala had been going for years, from the 20s all the way up to the 70s. But I did kind of feel like, well, hang on, why do we need to be separate? Shouldn't we be as involved as everybody else? And by this point, I was working with people who were associated with the Durham Miners Association. My husband, Paul, is always, marching with his trade union, the Durham Miners Gala. And I was like, we should start a banner group. We should totally do that. And so I took a bit of advice from people who knew the crack about the Durham Miners Gala. And then I met the women, and that was it. That was just it. You can't, better women I don't think I'll ever meet, and I continue to meet incredible women throughout this. And the reason women need to be involved, let's just bring this down to brass tacks. Women are just better organisers. They are fantastic. Once they put their mind to something, they can achieve anything, and especially if they work together. That is why women need to be leading the charge in community activism, in trade unions, in parliament. The women I've met could change the world, and do. So yeah, that's my answer.
You're absolutely right, Laura. Absolutely right. And what you said there about how you didn't think you had any issues until you started speaking to other women, and then realised that actually you did have issues, but they were just normalised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again,
it's a massive problem, because we've just been
Absolutely.
taught that these behaviours that we're seeing from men predominantly, but also other women, and other women who just sort of accept it as normal. I'm seeing more and more of it now, and I'm just like, no, I don't want my daughter to have to experience these things and think it's okay, because I tell you what, it's bloody well not. And so that's kind of what is my driving force.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a little bit of time, so I am going to go back around you again in the same order, and just very quickly ask you. So first of all, Fiona, which woman inspires you?
Well, I could say all of the greats, Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, but what I think I would like to give credit to today is the 89.3% of nurses which are women, 77% of all NHS workers who are women, the 83% of social care workers who are women, the 58% of retail workers who are women, and 76% of teachers who are women, who have actually carried us throughout this pandemic. And we must give complete solidarity that they get more than the measly, disgusting 1% that this, thinking I was going to swear there, that this ghastly government has actually offered them. So solidarity to those women.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I had a conversation, a doorstep conversation with a friend of mine who's a nurse. She had a meeting up at Bishop Auckland and was passing through my hometown on her way back to Durham today. And some of the stuff that she's told me, this needs absolutely sorting. It does. You've got people, nurses, earning less. Like Emma, you said last night, if you went back into midwifery now, you'd be on the same salary as you were in 2009. They're earning less money now than in 1%. I mean, it's just a kick in the teeth, isn't it? Absolute kick in the teeth.
So all of that clapping was just, well,
it was for nothing. Absolutely nothing. Neve, which woman inspires you?
I'm not sure there's anybody left in the world that doesn't already know this, but Heather Wood is my idol. I'm not from Durham Coalfield. I'm from the West Midlands, but I am working class, and I went to Durham University, which is why I am here in Durham. And I was really alienated from my peers, and not just from my peers, but from myself, because I was working class. I'd gone to an elite university, and there's a certain idea that's on you about how you're supposed to behave within that context in order to get by, and in order to ameliorate socially, become socially mobile. And it didn't take very long for me to reject that, but I was also warring with the part of the space that I was in that was telling me to reject my history and my class, and that which defined my experience clearly, of life, of university, etc. And then I started to get involved in stuff that was happening around the strike at the university, of university staff, surrounding things like pension and the pay gap, etc. Which meant that I became involved in stuff that was happening at Miners Hall, started organising students in solidarity with the striking workers. But then there was the Miners Gala and the Women's Banner Group marching for the first time in 2018, I believe it was. And it was like coming home. Yeah, I was so far away from my home, but it was like coming home for the first time.
Aww.
And then, I learned of Heather and the, the struggle and the accumulation of resources that were being, hoarded by the very same people that were ruining the lives of miners, that were taking work from them and pay, and the redistribution of those resources by women in the community for each other, for the greater good. It moved me profoundly, and it still does. But yeah, so all of you my idols, but certainly Heather in particular, and yeah, I hope she's watching, because
She absolutely is.
yeah, but yeah, that's me.
Neve, I don't blame you. She is also my idol. And, I stood on that stage in Red Hills in 2018 when we unveiled our community banner. And I sobbed through my entire speech, because I was talking about how I'd waited my whole life to meet the woman who got me a Christmas present during the miners' strike, and it still wells me up thinking about it every time I talk. So I'm going to stop. And
I feel like we should get a signed photo for Neve.
I have met Heather. I met her last year at your at your very same International Women's Day event, and she sat next to me. And obviously, I was thinking, not only is she Heather Wood, she's also a film star who I'd seen on the big screen in I was going, oh, sorry, we missed you. And I remember she sat down next to me, and she was like, I think I said that I'd seen her in it at the end of the year before, and she's like, started telling me a story about her pal Ken Loach, etc. And then of course follows the stories of how, like, as you were saying earlier on, the kind that were in your interview with her about taking that space, and it's that idea of these women visionaries who just throw patriarchal hierarchies out the window. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
And Neve, something, I can honestly speak for Heather when I say this. You will be her absolute inspiration. She is so much in awe of the young women coming through our movement now and picking up where she's left off, basically. So thank you. She still considers me young. I think that's a bit weird, but you are the young ones coming through now. So very quickly, Emma, which woman has inspired you?
Well, the two Bettys, Betty from Horden and Betty from Blackhall, obviously, and my mum, Patty, who was a nurse all her life and gave everything. At my mum's funeral, my mum did worked all her life as a nurse, brought up 4 children, educated us, bullied us rather into education, made sure we all got a really good education, something that she didn't get, but we all really did get. And at my mum's funeral, a woman stood at the back the whole time and then came up to me at the end of her funeral and said, I just wanted you to have this. Your mum gave me this. She lent me this, and I never got to give her it back. And it was 250 quid. And I thought I'd better give you it back because I didn't get to give her it back while she was alive. And I said, no, obviously, my mum wanted you to have that. So you keep that. But my mum was just one of those people that, like the two Bettys, if you needed it, my mum made sure you had it. So the two Bettys and Patty.
That's wonderful, Emma. And Laura referred to the book earlier that we've been trying to put together since 2017. And Emily Thornbury mentioned this on the stage actually at the big meeting a couple of years ago. That currently on our new silk banner we have representation of everyone's nana, because so many women came forward when we asked people for their stories of which women inspired them. So many people came forward and said their nana that we had to have her on the silk banner. So yeah, your nana's on the banner. Samantha, which woman has inspired you?
I'm going to give a shout out to Lisa Turnbull, Tracy Maguire and Trish Fair, who were leading people within the County Durham Teaching Assistants Industrial Action a few years back. They've done some, I mean, obviously what they did was brilliant at the time, but they've really changed how teaching assistants can be represented now, and made teaching assistants really think about what union they want to be in for who is going to represent them best. And I think that's they've made a shift there. So I think that's really great in terms of representation for teaching assistants going forward, and hopefully will help us achieve a national pay scale for teaching assistants, which is what we really need.
That's absolutely right. Is that a campaign that they're trying to take forward at the moment, then, the national pay scale?
Well, it's early. Yeah, that's what we need. That's the goal. It's probably a long time off yet, because it's really tricky. It's really.
That's amazing, and that campaign, yeah, it was a bit of a bone of contention, wasn't it, a few years ago with them? Those get me teeth in. Those of us in the party that disagreed with the outcome of the council. It was difficult and made lots of meetings quite uncomfortable, shall we say.
I just think if more of the people who were involved in that decision had children who needed teaching assistance, they might have asked more questions.
Yeah, like you as a mother of SEND children, God, they are invaluable. My kids wouldn't be where they were without teaching assistants. They certainly wouldn't.
Absolutely.
Laura, which woman inspires you?
Well, it's really difficult to pin it down to one person.
Isn't it?
It is. I mean, I guess people will know, if they followed the banner group, that Pat McIntyre is a huge inspiration to me. I'm actually absolutely devastated that I only got to meet her about 3 times before she passed away. I always thought she was incredible and kind and warm, and had the most amazing stories, and gave everyone around her this sense of just feeling welcome. It was really lovely. But I remember going to her funeral, and when I was reading through the order of service, at the back they had like some of her most important achievements, and this thing was pages long, and every single thing she'd done was world changing, and I was like, this woman is amazing. Like, if I could do one of the things off this list, I'd feel like I could die happy, you know, I'd achieved something. She was just unbelievable, and that sort of spurred me on to go, if I could do anywhere near one thing that she'd done, I'd feel like I'd made a difference. And then the thought that, you know, she wasn't with us anymore, and we really didn't want people like her to be forgotten. That was sort of a really big driving force for me. She's absolutely fantastic. But I think it would be really unfair for me to try and name all the women who inspire me. You know, we've got like Fleur Griffiths, for example, is just like my spirit animal. She's so loving and warm and intelligent and creative, and I look up to her so much. She's incredible. And obviously Heather, you can't talk about inspirational women and not mention Heather if you're from this area. It's just impossible. All of you on this call, all of the women on all of the shows we've done this week, everyone who's ever emailed the Women's Banner group, every single person I met has got a story and something to say, and just something that I get. You can see the glint in their eye where that's what they're passionate about. Any woman who's passionate about anything, I take inspiration from, and just want to make the world a better place for all these fantastic women. And if I can be half as good as any of the women that I meet, then I'll feel like I've achieved something.
I think you already have, Laura. And Pat is another one of our inspirational women who has pride of place on the front of our banner as well. So you know, anybody who hasn't seen our banner, hop onto our Facebook page and go and have a look at it. Our website.
It's banner launch was the last time we were all out.
It was. Yeah, before today, that was the last time we all met. in the lovely little Spennymoor
Yes,
settlement
yeah.
in my hometown.
Can I just say quickly, Lynn, if people want to join the Women's Banner group, I need to say, like, we don't have a structure. We don't have you have to fill this form in to join. Nip onto our Facebook page. We have a mission statement. If you agree with that mission statement, you are one of us and you are part of the Women's Banner group. Come to us, email us with anything you want us to get involved in. You know, if you want to have a say on something, absolutely. We don't have any hierarchical structures. Yes, we've got a core team who organise, but just like what we do and we will like what you do. It's very mutual, the whole thing.
Absolutely. And if they want a platform or, you know, for any campaigns, let us know, because we love campaigns. Can I just take this opportunity to thank each one of our panelists for joining us today? What a wonderful panel. What an outstanding group of women. You are all a total inspiration. You really are. And I'm sure those watching at home will feel utterly inspired to go out and start and getting active in their local community. Thank you also to everyone at home for joining us tonight. Even though I can't see you, it's really strange having watched the previous two and watching all of the comments and things like that you're completely blind to all of that, and this just looks like a normal Zoom. It's just us talking to each other. Very strange. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to these amazing stories as much as I have. And finally, just before we go, if anyone watching doesn't know the background and history of the Women's Banner Group, how we started, what we've been doing over the last couple of years, and what we've got planned for the future, have a look on our Facebook page where you can see a link for a pre-recorded talk that Samantha, Laura and I made for the history of Concert Steelworks for their series of International Women's Day events, which was broadcast at noon today on their YouTube channel. I think Paul's got the link for me. He's going to drop it in the chat. So again, thank you everyone, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.